Welcome back to another episode of BreBre Talks MMA. So real quick, before we get into UFC 297, which is honestly what I am most excited for right now, it is a huge event. It's in Canada. It's in Toronto. We've got a ton of Canadian fighters on the card. And we also have some St. Louis fighters on the card, which I'm really excited for. So it's going to be awesome. This is Sean Strickland's first title defense. So I'm very, very curious to see how this goes. And we're going to get into all that here in a minute. First, I'm just going to do a quick little recap of the fights from Saturday. So Ankalaev versus Walker was the main event. So Magomed Ankalaev rematched Johnny Walker. Their last fight ended in a no contest because of an illegal knee, and Johnny Walker said he was in the desert, so the doctor decided to stop. It was a mess. But anyways, so they did the rematch, and it went pretty much exactly how I expected. A TKO win for Magomed Ankalaev. There were some things that I noticed, and sorry, my allergies are really bad, so that's why I can't breathe. But there were some things that I noticed about Magomed Ankalaev in this fight that I hadn't really seen in fights prior. So in the Jan Blachowicz fight, I had noticed that he had switched stances. I think it was like a little bit later in the fight, maybe the third or fourth round. He had switched stances because his leg was literally getting obliterated. Jan Blachowicz was very effective with his leg kicks in that fight. So that basically destroyed his leg, and then he switched stances. But what I noticed was, and he was landing shots from orthodox, but I noticed that he didn't seem super comfortable throwing from orthodox. He didn't look like that was his plan. But then in this fight, in the Johnny Walker fight, it looked like he had planned to switch stances. And I noticed that in the Jamal Hill fight, Jamal Hill switched stances, I think, to kind of try to close the distance, to land that, I think it was was it a right hook? I think it was a right hook. Yeah, because he switched to orthodox through the right hook, so it was a rear hook. So I noticed that, and that was one opportunity that I kind of saw that Magomed could kind of take advantage of, because Johnny Walker seems to be a little vulnerable to the right hook for some reason. But I did notice that Ankalaev was incorporating a lot of stance switching, which I was happy to see because I think it really was effective for him in this fight. And he did it very beautifully. Like, it didn't look forced. It looked very natural. And it looks like that's something maybe he's been working on. And maybe because of the way that the fight with Jan played out, he was like, okay, I need to know that I'm comfortable throwing from both stances. And also, it kind of throws off your opponent. And Johnny Walker probably wasn't expecting that. So probably threw him off. And then when he threw that right hook, it landed beautifully. It was a perfect right hook. Just honestly, what I notice about Ankalaev, and this is why I think that he's such a problem for a lot of fighters in this division, is that he's very good at the basics. He's very good at boxing. He's very good at timing his punches. You know, he's not throwing everything he has. He's not swinging for the fences. And Johnny Walker was really kind of telegraphing a lot of his strikes. So that was one thing that I noticed, is just very clean boxing, not a ton of flashy, spinning back kicks or anything crazy, just very basic striking, but it's also very advanced the way that he does it. So it's simple, but it's not simple at the same time, if you know what I mean. It's and not only that, but he has excellent ground game as well, which he didn't even need to use against Johnny Walker, which I think was probably smart. I think, looking at that matchup, I thought Magomed had an advantage on the feet, honestly, to begin with. So there's really no point in wrestling, and then you don't want to take a chance with Johnny Walker on the ground because he's got some great jiu-jitsu. He's got excellent submission game. So I think Ankalaev fought very smart and, got the finish. And so I don't know. I mean, I feel like when you see that name, Magomed Ankalaev, you immediately assume, okay, he's a grappler. But it's like, he's honestly been known for his striking for a while, and just has very good boxing. Very good he's very good defensively and offensively. Doesn't throw everything into all of his punches, but he picks his shots and he lands. So I think that he might be a problem for Alex Pereira, because I've seen, talks all around of, okay, Alex Pereira is going to fight Ankalaev next for the belt, and I do agree. I think that depending on the Jamal Hill situation, I think that Ankalaev should get the next title shot. I mean, he arguably won the fight with Jan. I mean, I could see a case for both sides, but he arguably won, and it was a close fight regardless. But you could argue that he won the fight nonetheless. Went to a draw, so he didn't end up getting the title. Like, that was for the title. That was supposed to be for the title. Like, people forget. So he's already fought for the title technically once, and it went to a draw, so neither of them got it. And then Jamal Hill fought Glover Teixeira when he was like 43 years old to get the belt. And I'm not taking anything away from Jamal Hill, but I think that they're both just as deserving of a title shot next. 100%. So I think that Ankalaev versus Pereira makes sense. Unless, of course, Jamal Hill is able to, beat Pereira. I think that Ankalaev has better chances of beating Alex Pereira than Jamal Hill does, just because he has so many more weapons. Like, I think he's just more dangerous in more areas than Jamal Hill. Actually, the Jamal Hill fight is really interesting, and I don't know what to expect from that, really. I don't know how that fight's going to go, because they both got a lot of power. Yeah, that's a really interesting fight. And honestly, I'm excited for both matchups. But is Jamal Hill going to be ready to go in time? And if he's not, then Ankalaev is absolutely next for the title. So how does that matchup go with Ankalaev and Pereira? I honestly think that Ankalaev could expose Pereira's ground game easily. And I also think that because Ankalaev has such good defense and such good boxing, could potentially expose a little bit of Pereira's game, because Pereira kind of throws, like, it's a very... I was talking to my coach, my MMA gym. I was talking to him about this, and it's like he throws very awkwardly. Like, it's all kind of like from the hip, but the way that he does it is so interesting, and that's why he creates so much power, because of the way that he throws. But at the same time, he kind of leaves himself open, and we saw that in the Adesanya fight. He leaves himself open to shots, and so I could see Magomed winning a point fest with him. Absolutely could see that. I don't know if Magomed... I mean, if he can knock out Johnny Walker the way that he did, there is a chance I think he could finish Pereira. But I think it's more likely that he would finish him on the ground than on the feet, just because I know that Ankalaev has better ground game than Pereira. But he didn't necessarily have better ground game than Johnny Walker. So I think that would be an area for him to focus on in that fight. And I think that whether he goes to the ground or stays on the feet or mixes it up, which I think would probably be the best way to do it, I think Ankalaev could absolutely expose Pereira. And that's we see this all the time with these specialists. We see them get to, such a high point in their career because they're a specialist, but then they hit a ceiling when they fight somebody well-rounded. I mean, look at Volkanovski. He's very well-rounded. He's the type of guy, I feel like, that could expose, a specialist like a Pereira if they were in the same weight class. You know what I mean? So I feel like that is a similar style fighter. Now, I think Magomed has a little bit of a different game. Volk uses a lot of leg kicks and more wrestling. I think that they're very different, but they're both very good at a lot of things, and that's why they're kind of similar. So I think that a fighter like that, Magomed, who's very good at the basics, but very good at a lot of different areas in the basics, I think could absolutely cause huge problems for Pereira if they were to fight. So it'll be interesting. But yeah, that's my take on that. And then I saw Jim Miller won again, which honestly didn't surprise me because when I watched the post-fight interview, or not a post-fight interview, it was a pre-fight interview with his opponent, Gabriel Benitez, he was saying he didn't know who Jim Miller was. And then I was just like, yeah, there's no way he's going to win this fight because if I was fighting somebody with that much experience, I would want to study them, you know, which honestly kind of blows my mind how many fighters I talk to that like are unaware of a lot of what's going on in the sport, you know, and sometimes fighters don't really need to pay attention. You know, they're more focused on their training. They're focused on them, which makes sense. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of fighters that really study the sport. Like Demetrius Johnson's a great example. Henry Cejudo. Like you look at some of these fighters who really study the sport, and it does boost their fight IQ because they're paying attention to what's going on. They're learning from other fighters' mistakes. They're watching film constantly. So I think that it does give you an edge if you pay attention and you study the sport. But that's just my take on that. I also saw Bruno Ferreira got a spectacular knockout. Phil Hawes. That was one of the more brutal knockouts I've seen in a while. Definitely the most brutal one on the card, in my opinion. That was rough, honestly. And then Nicholas Mota with the upset over Tom Nolan. I had a feeling that could happen. I had a feeling. I'm like, I feel like either Tom Nolan is going to go in there and just like bulldoze him, or Nicholas Mota is going to do that to him because Nicholas Mota has more experience. You know, he trains at Extreme. He's training with legit guys, and I thought that there was a huge chance that that hype train could get derailed, and it did. So, I mean, Tom Nolan, he's young. He's got time. You know, he was only, I think, 5-0 going into this fight. So, it's one of those things where sometimes just not having the experience, you know, it's an adrenaline rush. It's your UFC debut. I feel like that probably took a little bit of a toll on him as well. But great fight nonetheless. That was, I mean, it as soon as they started that fight, I knew, because I saw, like, Tom Nolan looked kind of hesitant, and Nicholas Mota looked like he was just about to take over, and he did. So, very impressive finish from Nicholas Mota. I was really excited about that. But let's get into UFC 297, because this Saturday is a huge middleweight title fight. Women's bantamweight title fight. So we've got a lot going on. And let's just go ahead and start with the main event. Usually I kind of start with the prelims and work my way down, or work my way up. But this time I'm just gonna go in guns a-blazing. I'm gonna start with the main event. So Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. Sean Strickland is 28-5. Dricus du Plessis is 20-2, so Sean's got a little bit more experience. He's definitely been around the block. He's fought a lot of different styles of fighters. You know, he's fought grapplers, he's fought kickboxers, he's fought all kinds of different fighters, and so has Dricus, honestly. You know, he's coming off a win over Robert Whittaker, who I've always thought was the most well-rounded fighter in the division, and for him to do that to Robert Whittaker is honestly really impressive, because Robert Whittaker is very good everywhere. He's very good on the ground, very good on the feet, has very technical striking. So I think that Dricus just kind of overwhelmed him, it looked like. Now, I also wonder, you know, what's going on with Whittaker, because I guess I've seen Whittaker kind of have a loss like that, I guess like Adesanya. But that was when Adesanya was like, nobody was touching him, you know? So I don't know. I think that there could be a little bit of Whittaker is kind of on a decline, and there also could be a little bit of Dricus is on an incline. So I think those two things, when they come together, you know, that's what happens. So Dricus, honestly, I wasn't super impressed with him in his fights before, so I was glad to see that performance, because he showed a lot of improvement. The only question that we still don't have answers for is, how is his cardio? Because his cardio looked great in the Robert Whittaker fight, but it only went, 2 rounds. So we still don't know. I mean, he's never seen a 4th round. So we still really don't know, like, what is he going to look like going into the third, fourth, and fifth round? That's the big question in this matchup, because there is a possibility he could finish Sean. I'll just say that. There's a huge possibility he could finish Sean in the first 2 rounds. But I think if he doesn't take advantage of that in those first 2 rounds and finish him, I don't see him winning the fight. I think he has to finish Sean in the first 2 rounds, because Sean will absolutely take over. And even though like people have told me, like, oh, well, he got the deviated septum surgery, and yeah, I'm aware of that. With Dricus, and that was one thing that he claimed was hurting his cardio, but I don't know that that's really as big of an obstacle, or as big of a change that's going to make up the difference in the cardio, because Sean Strickland has by far the best cardio in the division. He is also really just smart with the way that he fights. He doesn't use a ton of energy. He's very good at pacing, and I think it's because he spars so much that he knows how to pace himself really, really well, and that's why he doesn't use too much energy and he doesn't gas himself out. So with somebody like Dricus, I don't think he has that ability. I don't think that he knows how to pace himself the same way that Strickland does, and that's why I think that if he doesn't finish Strickland in the first 2 rounds, that it's going to be rough. I mean, that's going to be a rough go for him in third, fourth, fifth rounds when Strickland just really starts to get into his groove. I think that, it's going to be tough. And Strickland almost finished Adesanya in the first round. So, I mean, there's a possibility we could always see Sean Strickland finish Dricus. I just think that more likely what will happen is that Sean Strickland will win by decision. The biggest difference to me in this matchup is the cardio and the experience. So, Sean Strickland, 28-5, so he's had 33 pro MMA fights. Dricus has 22. But if you look at Sean Strickland's fights, 5 of those fights have been 5 rounds. So he's been in 5-round fights 5 times. Dricus has never seen a 4th round. And I've had people try to argue with me about this, and I'll tell them to go look at all of Dricus' fights and show me when has he had a 5-round fight. He might have been planning to have a 5-round fight, but he's never seen a 4th round in his career. So that to me is a big question mark. I'm not saying that he's going to, totally gas out in the 3rd and 4th round. I'm not saying that, but it's very likely that Sean is going to have the better cardio and be able to pick up the pace and take over in those later rounds. So that to me is the biggest difference. Also, Dricus has high-level kickboxing. That is one thing that I worry about with Sean. Sean does have great defense, though. So I think he'll be able to block and parry a lot of Dricus' shots, because Dricus does tend to telegraph a little bit, and he does swing a little wide. So I think that, and we see that all the time with these bigger guys. A lot of times, like Apollo Costa, like those types of fighters, a lot of times they do throw very heavy, which could be a problem for Sean, because if Sean gets caught with one punch, I mean, he could get dropped, and then Dricus gets on top of him and finishes him. So there is that risk for Sean for sure. And also, Dricus does have good wrestling. But the problem with that is I think if Dricus spends too much time trying to take Sean down, I think he's going to waste energy, and I think he's really going to gas himself out, because Sean has excellent takedown defense. Excellent takedown defense. One of the highest takedown defense in the division. So I think that Dricus' best path to victory, honestly, is probably just to try to knock him out. I don't think the wrestling will really be a huge problem. I mean, it could be a huge problem for Sean in the first couple rounds. But if, like I said, if Dricus isn't able to finish him, then I think he's just going to waste a lot of energy. And then, like I said, Sean's going to take over. So that's the thing. I just don't know. I don't see as many paths to victory for Dricus as I do for Sean. Sean, I feel much more confident, because I know he has good boxing. He actually has an underrated ground game, honestly. I know he jokes about it, like he threw his jiu-jitsu black belt in the trash, and he's like, he doesn't really do it. But I think he has an underrated ground game, and he could be doing that so that, maybe Dricus will underestimate him on the ground. But he does have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I think that I'm leaning towards Sean on this one. I'm not saying for sure Sean is going to win, but if I had to predict this fight, I would say Sean by decision. So, but other than that, I mean, Dricus is bigger than Sean. They are the same height, and the reach is the same. It's just the physicality of Dricus will be a little bit more than Sean, and he's kind of built more like a cannoneer. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. It will be interesting, and he definitely could cause some problems for Sean, especially with his power and just his overall, physicality, his strength. So he could cause problems for Sean, but ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm going with Sean Strickland. The women's bantamweight title fight, Raquel Pennington versus Mayra Bueno Silva. Raquel is currently ranked number 2. Mayra Bueno Silva is ranked number 3. And obviously, Amanda Nunes no longer the champion, so this is the fight that we are going to see a new champion at bantamweight. This is interesting because I feel like they're both, they're both a little bit smaller in that division than, like, I feel like Amanda Nunes was bigger, and I feel like, trying to think of another one that was bigger, like Chason. However you say her name. Chason? I don't remember. Raquel fought her. And she's huge. She was like 6 feet tall. And, and like, it was crazy. It looked like they were in a different division. But Mayra and Raquel are kind of around the same size. So it'll be interesting. I think that Raquel has fought much tougher competition than Mayra. I think that she has probably better striking than Mayra. I don't know about the ground, though. That is the question mark in this one. I think Mayra definitely probably has better ground game, and that's where I kind of wonder if she will be able to submit Raquel. But if you look at Raquel, all of her losses in the UFC have been to former champions. So her experience is just out of this world compared to Mayra. Mayra, she's 10-2, but the one... I think it was a no contest. They ruled it, it was a no contest. Her win over Holly Holm, she submitted Holly Holm, but it was overturned because of her ADHD medication that showed up, which is kind of BS, honestly. I mean, it's freaking ADHD medication. I mean, I guess it could be performance enhancing, but she was on Ritalin. I don't think Ritalin's really gonna really help you that much in fighting, but whatever. I don't know. But so it was overturned. So she should be 11-2, but it's whatever. I am kind of leaning toward Mayra just because of the grappling. If there is a huge skill difference on the ground, then I think that as soon as the fight goes to the mat, Mayra is just gonna be able to submit her. So she does have 7 submission wins, not including the Holly Holm submission. So technically really 8 submission wins. Yeah, I think that's just very dangerous. And hopefully Raquel, if she wants to win the fight, I think she's going to have to stay on the feet. I don't think grappling with her and even getting into a clinch exchange could be dangerous for Raquel, because that could make it a little bit easier for Mayra to get her to the ground, even though Raquel is very good in the clinch. Yeah, I think if Raquel kind of sticks to her striking, I think she could win. But I think I'm leaning towards Silva, honestly, which kind of surprised me because I saw Raquel Pennington versus Silva, and then immediately I was like, Pennington's going to smash her. But then I kind of looked into it more, and now I'm leaning towards Silva just because of her submission game. With her being such a specialist, I think that, this could be her time. We'll see. I don't know. It's very interesting, but she did lose to Fiorot. So that, kind of gives me questions. And Raquel being so experienced, like, yeah, I don't know. If I had to pick, I'd probably pick Silva, but I wouldn't be surprised if Raquel wins this fight. I mean, I think Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough call. That's a tough call because it's a very interesting matchup. And there's a lot of question marks with Silva because she hasn't fought near the competition that Raquel has, not even close. So we'll see. The next fight, which is actually, this is kind of a similar situation. So Neil Magny versus Mike Malott. So Neil Magny's another veteran, 28-11. So he's been in a lot of fights, and he's fought the best of the best. He's fought everybody in the welterweight division, it seems like. He's coming off a loss to Ian Gary, and in that fight, his legs got eaten up real bad. So I don't know. I don't know if that was Ian Gary's game plan. I think that Neil is very vulnerable to leg kicks because it didn't take very long for them to start affecting him. So I'm wondering if Mike Malott is going to implement that into his game plan. I would think, and also if he can throw the leg kicks and if he can do damage to Neil Magny's leg and kind of immobilize him, I think that will make it a lot easier for Mike Malott to take him down because ultimately I think that Mike Malott has a huge advantage on the ground when it comes to the jiu-jitsu. So, yeah, I mean, Mike Malott, he's 10-1. He has 6 wins via submission. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He is undefeated in the UFC. He's 3-0. He has a 100% finish rate, so if he doesn't submit you, he's going to knock you out. I honestly, even though Neil Magny is much more experienced, and I thought Neil Magny was going to be able to beat Ian Gary, but yeah, I think that where Neil Magny's really good is in the clinch. And I don't know if that will work with Mike Malott. I don't know. So just the fact that he's fought everybody, he's been in so many different positions, but the thing is, Neil Magny, he has been submitted 6 times. And if you look at the way that he's been submitted, they're very similar to the way that Mike Malott has submitted his opponents. So guillotines, arm triangles. I think that Mike Malott has a more clear path to victory, which would definitely be on the ground with Neil Magny, than Neil Magny has a path to victory with Mike Malott. So I am going to go with Mike Malott on this one. And normally I don't pick against Neil Magny, but in this situation, I just don't know that this is a great matchup for him. I actually think that the Ian Gary fight was a better matchup for Neil than Mike Malott. And Mike Malott's got a lot of momentum right now. He's got a lot of hype. He's in his home country. He's going to be fighting in Canada. So, yeah, I just think the odds are a little stacked against Neil Magny in this one. So I'm going with Mike Malott on that one. And then featherweight. So I'm really excited for this fight. This is a very interesting matchup. Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev. And Arnold Allen is 19-2. He is 5'8". Movsar is 5'7". Movsar has slightly longer reach, 72.5 inches, so he's got a 2.5 reach advantage. It's not a huge reach advantage, but a decent reach advantage. One thing about Arnold Allen is he is very well-rounded. He, very similar to what I was saying about Raquel, he's fought tough competition. So he's fought Max Holloway was his most recent loss was to Max Holloway. So honestly, if you lose to Max Holloway, it's hard to even count that as a loss. and he didn't get finished. He's actually never been finished. So, and not just in the UFC, in MMA overall, he's never been finished. So, but Movsar is 17-0 undefeated. He was an M1 champion, which is a Russian MMA organization. He's very fast, very explosive. Arnold Allen, not quite as fast. So I think there's going to be a big difference in the speed, in the striking, and also in the grappling. Movsar has excellent grappling skills, so I could see that being a problem for Arnold as well. So I'm going to go with Evloev in this one. As much as I really do like Arnold Allen, I think that Evloev is just going to be the better fighter in this matchup. I think he's faster, more explosive, better wrestling. And he's got decent strike. He doesn't have like amazing striking, but it's decent. I think if he sticks to the basics with the striking and, throws jabs and things like that, I think he could do just fine standing with Arnold Allen. And he's so much faster. That's the thing that I'm kind of thinking will help him win the fight. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that one. If I had to guess, I would say probably Evloev by decision. I don't think he's going to finish Arnold Allen. Like I said, Arnold Allen's never been finished. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that one. And then we have a middleweight fight. So Sean Strickland's training partner, Chris Curtis, is fighting Marc-Andre Barriault. Marc-Andre Barriault, his most recent fight was over the summer with Eric Anders. I actually interviewed Eric Anders before that fight. Fun fact. But that was the first time I ever interviewed a UFC fighter. That was pretty fun. But yeah, so Marc-Andre Barriault, he has a win over Eric Anders' most recent win. It was a close fight, though. It was a very competitive fight. And what I worry about with Barriault is he did get hit with some clean 1-2s and some clean right hand or left hands from Anders in that fight. So I worry about that with Chris Curtis because Chris Curtis has very heavy hands. Very heavy hands. So if he gets hit by Chris Curtis, that might be really difficult. Because think about it, Chris Curtis fought Kelvin Gastelum in a really, really tough, it was a war. And the thing is, Kelvin Gastelum, he's very fast, compared to, the other middleweights, very fast, even though he's not at middleweight anymore. But he has fast hands. He's very tough. That's, I think, the biggest thing with Kelvin Gastelum, the biggest difference, why he wins fights, because he's very tough. He has a chin. So, to me, that, yeah, it does kind of concern me with Barriault. I think that Chris Curtis could absolutely knock him out. Now, the thing is, Barriault is very technical, but I don't know how his ground game is. Especially compared to Chris Curtis. I would think Chris Curtis definitely would have an advantage on the ground. I mean, he has a win over Brendan Allen, and he was able to hang with Brendan Allen on the ground just fine. So, yeah, I think that Marc-Andre Barriault could win kind of more like a point fest, kind of like what he did with Eric Anders. But if he gets into a war with Chris Curtis, I think he's going to get finished. So I'm leaning towards Chris Curtis in this matchup. He's 30-10. He's got a ton of experience. He trains at Extreme. He trains with Sean Strickland. Marc-Andre Barriault trains at Killcliff. He's 16-6. So he's got great experience too. But I think Chris Curtis. I think I'm going to lean toward Chris Curtis on this one. I think he might be able to knock him out or win possibly a decision if he decides to maybe use some grappling. That would be cool. I would love to see Chris Curtis, kind of use some grappling in this fight, but he doesn't really use it that much. So I think it's just because he has so much power and he knocks people out. So we'll see. That's a really interesting fight. And then we have a bantamweight fight. So we have Brad Katona versus Garrett Armfield. Brad Katona is 13-2. He trains at SBG Ireland, obviously Conor McGregor's gym. He was on The Ultimate Fighter. He was on Conor's team. A lot of people remember that. I barely watched that season because, I don't know, I felt like it was just not... I don't know, something about this last season of The Ultimate Fighter just didn't feel like The Ultimate Fighter. It felt like too forced for some reason. I don't know. Maybe the whole Conor McGregor thing, I don't know. But I wasn't a big fan of that season. But, yeah. So, and he just fought... Cody Gibson, who was also on The Ultimate Fighter. It was like the finale fight. Just fought him. He won that fight, but it was a close fight. It was a very competitive fight. And one thing that I noticed about Brad Katona, in Cody Gibson was a lot taller and longer than him in that fight. So it was hard for Brad Katona to kind of deal with that range. So he does have a little bit of a sneaky jab that he throws, and he's able to kind of crack through. He's good at getting on the inside, good at getting in the pocket, and that's where I think he does some really great work with the striking. He's never been finished. He has an iron chin. His chin is made of steel. Like, it's insane the shots that he's able to take. He definitely has a great chin. He does expose himself to a lot of shots, though. He has great leg kicks. He has underrated grappling too. He is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He submitted Bryce Mitchell on The Ultimate Fighter years ago, on the first time he was on The Ultimate Fighter. And I've seen some of his fights in Brave, and he had some incredible takedowns and great grappling. So his opponent, Garrett Armfield from St. Louis, so gotta support the St. Louis people. Garrett is 9-3. He trains at Marathon MMA, which is Kansas City. That is where Trey Ogden, Miles Johns, Mike Breeden, they all train there. From what I've heard, it's a great gym, and they're doing some awesome work over there. So I'm really excited. I think that this is it's a tough fight for Garrett Armfield, but there are ways that he could win. And I would think that Brad Katona is probably the favorite in this matchup, but I do think that when you look at Garrett Armfield, so he's only 5'6", so he's the same height as Brad Katona, but he has a 70-inch reach. So he has really good range for his size, and I think that, just like in the Cody Gibson fight, could cause problems for Brad Katona. But I think what Brad Katona might try to do is get it to the ground. Because I do think that Brad Katona might have the advantage on the ground. Now, you never know. It's MMA. You never know what could happen. But I think that if Garrett Armfield can stay in boxing range and not let Brad Katona get in the pocket with him, I think if he can use his jab to keep him at range, and he has an excellent jab. Like, Garrett Armfield has one of the best jabs I've seen, honestly, in the division. He has very heavy hands too. When he hits you, I think it's just because of the technique. Like, he's so good at boxing. He covers a lot of distance with his jab. He really steps in with it. And also just the power that he's able to create is incredible. I mean, his last fight, he was able to get a knockout. So I could see Garrett doing a lot of damage to Brad Katona in this fight. I think that if he keeps it on the feet, I think that if he keeps Brad at range, I think he could win this fight. Probably, if I had to bet, would be a decision. Just because I know Katona has a really good chin. He's never been finished, so I think that it's going to be really difficult to finish him. But at the same time, I do think that Garrett has more power probably than anybody that Brad has fought in his hands. Garrett Armfield has been competing for a very long time, and mostly in striking. He told me that he started, I think, doing these like kickboxing tournaments or something when he was like 7 or 8 years old. Like, his parents took him to him. So he's been competing for a long time, and he's really focused on boxing. And we saw it in the Mike Breeden fight too. Like, what they're doing over there at Marathon, I think they're just really learning how to hit very hard. And I think Garrett has always had that ability, but since he's been training there, it seems like his boxing has just gone to a new level. So I think that, I think I'm going to lean toward Garrett in this one just because of the range, and he's got heavy hands. I think he could absolutely win a decision here. But I do think that it's going to be a difficult fight. It's going to be a tough fight. It could be fight of the night, honestly. I really do think so. It's going to be fantastic. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious to see what Brad Katona is going to try to do in this fight, if he's going to try to take Garrett down. That is the big question mark. But Garrett has good grappling too. So I would still think Brad has better grappling, but Garrett has good grappling. So we will see. I just think that Garrett's best bet would probably be to just try to outbox him. I think he absolutely could. So the next fight is another St. Louis fighter. We've got a featherweight bout. We've got Sean Woodson versus Charles Jourdain. I am super excited for this fight. This is such an interesting matchup, and Sean Woodson is so unique. He's 6'2", fighting at featherweight, and he has a 78-inch reach. So he's got these really long limbs, which is just makes it very interesting to watch. He's also very fast with his hands. He's got incredible speed. It's very difficult to read his strikes because of his speed and just the way that he throws. Yeah, and he's got an excellent jab. He actually knocked out Terrence McKinney on the Contender Series. So this guy flies under the radar somehow. I don't know how. He's 10-1. He trains at Wolves Den, which is a great gym right here in St. Louis. So I don't know. And then Charles Jourdain. He's 15-6, so he's got a little bit more experience. I saw that he's been training over at Brazilian Top Team in Canada. And he's from Canada, so this is a home territory for him. He's 5'9", so much shorter, and he's got a 68-inch reach. So Sean Woodson has a 10-inch reach advantage over Charles Jourdain. Now, where I think Charles Jourdain is very dangerous is on the ground, and I think that is where Sean might just want to be careful. Also, Jourdain is very well-rounded. He's very good in the pocket. That is where I think Sean will want to keep him away. And it's kind of a similar situation with Garrett. You know, use the jab, keep him outside. If he lets Jourdain get inside, that's where I think that Jourdain could really kind of cause problems for Woodson. And then also, Jourdain has never been knocked out. So I think that it's going to be tough for Woodson to finish him, but I do think it's possible. I think that he could easily get a decision win if he just kind of, stays out of the pocket, stays off the ground, and just, uses his kicks, his excellent boxing. Sean Woodson's boxing is crazy good, and like I said, he's very difficult to read, and I think that will probably cause problems for Jourdain. It's just how hard it is to see Sean's strikes coming and how long he is. But also he's got those long limbs. So even if he does get to the ground with Jourdain, I feel like there are some opportunities for him there too, like maybe a Darce or something like that. I don't know. I am curious about both of them going to the ground, because Sean does have good ground game. I just think that he's much better on the feet. So I think if the fight stays on the feet, I'm taking Sean Woodson all day long. I think if the fight goes to the ground, that's where I kind of have question marks. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe Jourdain might be able to win, because Jourdain was able to hang with Crone Gracie, who's a high-level black belt, who has not good striking. I normally don't say that, but it was just not good. His striking was not good. But whatever. But he was able to hang with Crone on the ground. I mean, he won the fight. And he won the fight beautifully. So yeah, I think that I'm going to go with Sean Woodson, even though obviously I'm a little biased because he's from St. Louis, but I honestly do think that Sean, if he keeps the fight on the feet, will absolutely dominate Charles Jourdain on the feet. 100%. I believe that. Absolutely. And then we've got a bantamweight bout. So this is actually a rematch from Contender Series. So Sergey City versus Ramon Tavares. This was originally on Contender Series this year. But it was stopped early, so I think that's why Dana brought Ramon Tavares back on, because he ended up... So Ramon went on Contender Series twice this year. The first time, got TKO'd by Sergey, who he's about to fight. The second time, he TKO'd Cortavius Romeus in 29 seconds. So when he came back, he was just like, bam, dominated. Ramon is 9-2. Sergey is 10-1. I really don't know what to think. I mean, Sergey basically winning the first fight. I mean, he did win the fight. Makes me think, like, how much differently is it going to go in the rematch? So I think I'm going to lean towards Sergey City as the safe pick on this one. But I wouldn't be surprised if Ramon kind of comes back with a vengeance. You know, sometimes in a rematch, they come back and they come back stronger. So we'll see. But I think I'm going to lean towards Sergey City on this one just because of the way the first fight played out. And then we have a women's strawweight bout. We have Jillian Robertson versus Poliana Viana. Jillian Robertson is 12-8. Poliana is 13-6. I think for this fight, I think that Jillian Robertson's jiu-jitsu, her submission game, is too good. She's honestly one of my favorites in women's strawweight to watch. She's really talented on the ground, really creative with her grappling. So I think I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson on this one. I think this is a good matchup for her. I think that Jillian has fought tougher competition too. So I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson via submission. I think that's a fairly safe bet, but you never know. It's MMA. But I think I'm going to go with Jillian Robertson on that one. And then we've got a welterweight fight. We've got Johan Lainez, hopefully I pronounced that right, versus Sam Patterson. Both these guys are from Contender Series. Johan is 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. Sam Patterson 5'11" with a 75.5-inch reach. I don't really know what to think about this one, to be honest. I think I'm going to go with Johan just because he's from Canada, you know, and he's on home turf. He's 27. He's a younger fighter. I don't know. I just have a feeling I'm just going to pick Johan. I don't really have a ton to go off of on that one. It's just kind of like looking at the statistics and looking at, you know, all that. I'm just going to go with Johan on that one. I'm not going to put too much thought into it. And sometimes that's the best way to pick, honestly. Sometimes when you like overanalyze it, sometimes you pick the wrong one. So I'm just going to go with my gut on that one. And then we've got a women's flyweight fight. I'm really excited for this one. Jasmine Jasdavicius versus Priscilla Cachoeira. Jasmine, she's another Canadian fighter. She fights at Niagara Top Team. She was also on Contender Series. I've been really impressed with her. She is on a one-fight losing streak, so she lost her last fight. Priscilla also lost her last fight. Priscilla is 4-5 in the UFC. She's 35 years old. Jasmine's 34. I just think that Jasmine has probably a little bit more potential in her career, I think, than Priscilla. But it's hard to say. It's really hard to pick this one. But I have been really impressed with Jasmine, even though she lost her last fight. I do think that she has a special talent, a special ability. So I am going to go with Jasmine on this one just because I believe in her. And then we have a flyweight fight. This is the first fight on the early prelims, which honestly, it's crazy that this is the first fight of the night. So Jimmy Flick versus Malcolm Gordon. Both guys have really actually a decent amount of experience in the UFC. So Malcolm Gordon's 14-7. Jimmy Flick is 16-7. Jimmy Flick was on Contender Series in 2020. So both these guys are on a 2-fight losing streak. I think this is another potential fight of the night. I think this could be a fantastic fight. It's flyweight, so it's going to be fast-paced. It's going to be fun. It's going to be aggressive. I think that they both have a lot on the line. And Jimmy Flick was kind of talking about this in an interview about how, they're both hungry. So I think we're going to see a fantastic fight. I think this is a great way to kick off the card. And I am going to pick Jimmy Flick on this one. I don't know why. I've always been a fan. I love watching him. I usually always pick him when I see him fighting. So I'm going to pick Jimmy Flick on this one. But yeah, so overall, this is a great card. I think that I'm looking here at some of these matchups. I'm really interested to see how the main event plays out because I think that is a potential fight that could be on UFC 300 is the winner of that fight. Obviously, women's Bantamweight title. Very curious how that's going to go. Mike Malott is a very hot prospect right now. So if he gets another win, hopefully another finish, then that's going to be huge for him. And I think he's going to get a huge fight next. And that would put him in the top 15. So that now you're talking about getting him in the rankings and really progressing his career. So Mike Malott, and it's in front of his, his home country in Canada. So I think that's a huge, huge fight. Evloev, I mean, if he wins against Arnold Allen, he could be in the title picture. So there's just a lot going on here. It's crazy. It's crazy. And if Sean Woodson can beat Charles Jourdain, that's going to be huge for him. And that would be huge for St. Louis. I mean, because he's out there representing our city. So I really, really do hope that he wins. And I think he could. I think he actually probably will. So I am very excited. There's a lot of great fights. And I think we will see some of these winners on UFC 300. Maybe Mike Malott, maybe Evloev, maybe Sean Woodson. We could see some of these guys at UFC 300. So it will be very interesting. I haven't really heard any more fights announced on UFC 300. I'm going to check really quick, but I haven't seen anything. So I'm not 100% sure if there's anything announced, but let me check really quick. They announced Muhammad Usman versus Chris Barnett. That fight's gonna be crazy. That is insane. I still can't even believe. I was just not expecting that matchup at all. Not at all. Was not expecting that. Taito Ivasa versus Marcin Tybura. That was announced. That's an Apex card. All these fights are Apex. I don't think any more UFC 300 fights have been announced that I'm aware of. So we'll see. Like I said, everybody's giving me crap because I said that UFC 300 was stacked. First of all, here's the thing. Here I'm going to explain to you guys something about MMA media. Okay? When one MMA media person says something, a lot of times the other MMA media people will say the same thing. So one person was probably like, oh, this card sucks. This card's disappointing. But when you look at the landscape of the UFC, you look at the rankings, you look at the potential matchups, what else do you want? Like, we got a great lightweight fight, Oliveira versus Sarukian. We've got an amazing women's strawweight title fight with Zhang Weili, one of the best women's strawweight fighters we've ever seen. I mean, we got Bo Nickel, one of the hottest prospects in the UFC right now. And what MMA fans are so spoiled. That's all I gotta say. But but the thing is like, I don't watch other MMA media people and what they say. Like, I don't listen to. I used to. And but I just say whatever I think. If I think it's stacked, I'm gonna say that. I don't care if you disagree with me. But at the same time, I am going to argue my point, and I think a lot of people are not paying attention to the entire landscape of how things have played out and not appreciating the fact that we got the fights that we got, and they've only announced like 5 fights. So they still have like 8 more at least to announce. And they're not going to announce the main event probably for a little while. They're going to take their time. They're not going to announce it right away. It's marketing, guys. So far, considering that they really are only announcing, like, they're not going to give you guys guns a-blazing, we've got this huge main event. They're not going to give you that right away. They're not going to, Conor McGregor's on UFC 300. They're not going to do that right away. Also, I think they're going to come out of left field with something we're not expecting at all. I 100% think so. I think there's going to be some legends on this card. I think that there's a lot more in the works than we realize. And of course, a lot of this is speculation, but I'm looking at the rankings. I'm looking at who's coming back. Jorge Masvidal said he's unretired. That's a potential. You look at all these different options. Pereira, Ankalaev versus Pereira, that could very well happen. Or Pereira versus Hill. That would be a huge fight. So I don't know what it is people are expecting from UFC 300. Like, do we want like, what do you guys want? Is like what I want to know. Because Islam's not going to be on the card, I don't think. I mean, he could. I don't think it's very likely. And what else do you guys want? We got Oliveira, one of the biggest stars in MMA. Got Bo Nickel, one of the biggest newer stars in MMA. We've got some huge names already. We got Yuri versus Rakic. That's going to be a great fight. So I am just kind of mind blown. Like I think it's just because these narratives always start with one person. Like one person will say, oh, this card isn't that good. And then everybody else will just kind of go along with that narrative. I don't do that. I say whatever I think. And sometimes people might think I'm wrong just because they heard, Ariel Helwani said this, Jesse on Fire said that, MMA Guru said this, and I like those people, But I think at the same time, a lot of times they all say the same thing. And a lot of times it's like negative. It's like, where's the positivity? Like, can we have a little bit of positivity in MMA, please? It's crazy. So I think sometimes just, I don't know, there's too much negativity in MMA. There's too much like, oh, this fighter sucks. And it's like, it almost seems like if you're not a world champion with like 18 title defenses, then MMA fans are like, you suck. It's like, where's the appreciation? I don't know. I think the card looks great so far. I'm excited for it. Hopefully I'll be able to go. Working on that. So hopefully I will be able to be there in person for UFC 300. That would be amazing. But I am excited for it. And I think there's going to be some huge fights announced that are yet to be announced. Probably fights that aren't even made yet. So there's still a ways to go, but even with the fights that we have so far, I'm pretty happy with them. Pretty happy with Oliveira versus Sarukian. Pretty freaking happy with Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan. Pretty freaking happy with Yuri versus Rakic. Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. And everybody's like, oh, Cody Brundage isn't that good. He just got a slam knockout not too long ago. And Bo Nickel doesn't have that many fights, guys. Like, he's not just going to jump into the rankings. That would be stupid. We don't want to rush Bo Nickel's career. So for his next few fights, he's probably always going to be a heavy favorite. That's just the way it's going to be. But there's still a lot of unknowns with him. And, is he going to be able to finish Cody Brundage? How is this fight going to go? We don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm pretty sure Bo Nickel is going to win. But the question is, how is he going to win? How is he going to look? Is he going to have any adversity? How is he going to handle the adversity? Are there going to be any holes in his game exposed? That's the big question. So I think, people don't think about these things as much and they look at it very black and white, but there's a lot of gray area too. So I think it's important to appreciate different things about the sport and think about it in a different perspective, which is what I try to do. I try to give people a different perspective, which is why I don't listen to what all the other MMA people say. I say whatever I think. I look at the facts, I look at what's going on, and then I give my opinion on it. So, but I just thought it was funny because everybody was like freaking out on me. I'm like, dude, it's okay if you don't think it's stacked, but you don't have to call me an idiot because I think it's stacked. Because I still stand by what I said. I'm like, I think this is a great card so far. I really do. I think the fights are awesome. And I'm really excited. When I saw Oliveira versus Sarukian, I got very excited. Very, very excited for that fight because I've been following Sarukian for a long time. Obviously, Oliveira is a legend of the sport. So it's going to be interesting. It is going to be an interesting card, but and there's obviously 299 is a great card too. I'm really excited for that one. I'm really excited for this weekend, UFC 297. It's going to be absolutely incredible. So, but that's all I got for you guys today. So thank you for watching. I appreciate you, even if you hate me, whatever. You're helping my algorithm anyways. So thank you for leaving your hate comments. But I will see you guys next week, and thank you again for watching, listening, however you consume this. So I will see you again on the next episode. Just kidding, I'm back. I recorded this episode earlier before I went to the gym, and then I went to boxing, which is why I'm all sweaty and gross looking, but I had to come back on here because while I was at the gym, I saw that they announced some fights for UFC 300. And they announced Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF title. There's a bug in here. Get out of here. Anyways, they announced Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway for the BMF title. Who saw this coming? Everybody was like, oh, Islam's going to fight Gaethje. Islam's going to fight Gaethje. Who would have guessed Max Holloway for the BMF belt? At UFC 300, it's perfect. And I had a feeling that they might do the BMF title, but everybody kept saying that Gaethje was going to fight Islam. So I was like, I guess not, you know. I love that fight. I love it because I've always wanted Max Holloway to move up to 155, especially since, you know, I don't think he's going to be able to beat Volkanovski. And honestly, I don't even know if he could beat Topuria, just because Topuria is, you know, he's young, he's on the rise, he's hungry. So I do like this. I really do. And I don't know. I think I'm leaning toward Justin Gaethje right now. But when I do a deep dive on it, I'm going to watch some tape, you know, kind of go back and watch some old fights and watch, you know, Holloway's fights with other lightweights to kind of get a better idea of how he is going to do with, you know, somebody who's bigger. You know, Justin Gaethje's bigger than the guys he's been fighting. He hits like a freaking Mack truck, nasty leg kicks, which that's one thing I do worry about with Holloway is the leg kicks and just Gaethje being able to basically immobilize him and kind of put a halt to just a volume that Max Holloway is usually able to put on people. But the thing I do like about Holloway is he has a freaking gas tank and he's a volume guy. So he throws so many punches. He lands a lot of them. He also has really good defense too. So, and he has a chin. But I don't know if anybody... I mean, Tony had a chin, too, before the Gaethje fight. You know, I mean, Gaethje's the type of guy that can ruin somebody's career. So, I don't know. And then the head kick with Dustin Poirier, like... I don't know. I'm leaning toward Gaethje, but... I don't know. I mean, it could be a 5-round decision for... I think it's going to be 5 rounds, because it's a BMF title. Could be a 5-round decision for Holloway easily, but I am leaning toward Gaethje. But I'm really excited. And I told you guys this card was going to be stacked. You guys don't believe anything I say ever. Just because all these other MMA media, oh, this card sucks. You guys need to listen to me. I know what I'm talking about. I knew they were going to announce more fights, and the fights are going to get better as they announce them. Like, the first fight they announced was Bo Nickel. Then they announced the Yuri versus Rakic. Then they announced, you know, it's building. They're building it up. Like, this isn't rocket science. It's marketing. So, I knew they were going to announce a big fight. I didn't know what it would be, but that's a huge fight. I love it. And then they also announced another freaking lightweight fight. There's 3 lightweight fights already. I love it. I love lightweight fights. Please, thank you, MMA gods, for giving us all these lightweight fights. And this is an OG lightweight fight. This is Jim Miller versus Bobby Green, 2 OGs of the game. And Jim Miller, you know, coming off a big win over Gabriel Benitez, who's also been in the UFC for a long time. Yeah, this is a fun fight because Jim Miller is very experienced. Obviously, so is Bobby Green, but Bobby Green is so unpredictable and such an awkward style and very, very non-traditional the way that he fights. You know, he has his hands down. Jim Miller has incredible submission game. He hits like a freaking... Man, he hits hard. Like, I always forget, because Jim Miller has such good submission game, I always forget that his hands... He's got heavy hands. So, I'm excited. I don't know what to expect in this. I don't even know how to call that fight, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's going to win that fight. I mean, Bobby Green just got, you know, annihilated by Jalen Turner. So that could have taken a toll on him a little bit. And Jim Miller, I mean, he's 40 years old, but man, he's killing it. He's still killing it. So I might lean a little bit toward Jim Miller in this one. I honestly might. So we'll see, though, because you never know with Bobby Green. You can never sleep on Bobby Green. But I love this fight because they're both, you know, they're not spring chickens anymore. They can't hang with, you know, these younger up-and-coming guys. Like, I don't want to see Bobby Green fight a Gamrot. I don't want to see Bobby Green fight a Moicano. You know, like, I want them to fight, you know, kind of in their own league, I guess you could say. The OG league. I love it. I love it. And I was hoping that Jim Miller would get matched up with an OG like Bobby Green or Tony Ferguson or somebody like that. So I'm really excited about that fight. I think that's all they've announced. I don't have my phone on me, so I can't check. But I'm pretty sure I'm gonna check on my computer. I forgot. I can literally check right now. Yeah, that's freaking huge. So far for UFC 300, we have Zhang Weili versus Yan Xiaonan, Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rakic, Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling, which I keep forgetting about that fight. That fight is huge. That's going to be insane. Davison Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt, Bobby Green versus Jim Miller, Cody Brundage versus Bo Nickel. That's what we have so far, and they still have yet to announce the main event. Like, whoever is saying this card isn't stacked, give me a break. Like, for real. This card is crazy already, and they haven't, like, they literally still could announce probably 6 to 8 more fights, depending on how many fights are going to be on the card. There probably won't be as many on the card because they're going to have so many title fights. I imagine they're going to have another title fight announced. If I had to guess, I would say probably a Pereira fight. Or maybe, I don't know. What do you guys think is going to be the main event? Leave me in the comments. What do you think is going to be the main event for UFC 300? And also leave in the comments, who do you think is going to win this weekend? Sean Strickland or Dricus du Plessis? All right, I'm out. Bye.